Calvoltsar.
What's up, beautiful people? Calvoltsar here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going over all of the different status effects in Outriders. Now, please be aware that all of the information I'm going to cover today can be found in the Start menu underneath your Guides tab. First, you need to go to the Character and Skills menu, and then again in the Enemy menu, and I would highly advise that you go and read this information for yourself. There's a total of 8 status effects in Outriders, 5 of which can be applied to your character from an enemy, and then all 8 can be applied to an enemy from your character. The 5 status effects that affect your character all have unique mechanics needed to remove that status effect. The 8 status effects all have symbols associated with them. When applied to your character, you can see this status effect symbol above your hotbar. When applied to the enemy, you can see the status effect symbol underneath their health bar. Some of these status effects also have visual effects associated with them when they are applied to your enemies. Status effects can be found on weapon mods and armor mods, enhancing your weapons or skills to apply certain status effects. Each class also revolves around 1 or 2 specific status effects and has some internal synergy built into their character tree that might make it worth speccing into a certain status effect or anomaly damage. The 8 status effects and their symbols are Bleed, Burn, Slow, Toxic, Freeze, Ash, Vulnerability, and Weakness. Please note that the status effect symbols you just saw were made by me, as the ones in-game are a little too small to be blown up to this size. Alright, let's start with the Bleed status effect that is associated with this red blood drop symbol. When applied to players, you take a damage over time while moving, but this can be avoided by standing still. When applied to the enemies, they take damage equal to 2.5% of your ability power every 0.5 seconds for 5 seconds. On screen now, you can see an enemy that is affected by the bleed effect. This status is going to synergize best with the Devastator class. Now let's take a look at the burn status effect, which is associated with this red flame symbol. When applied to players, you take damage while burning, but you can remove this damage over time by rolling, as you see on screen. When applied to enemies, they take damage equal to 3.7% of your ability power every 0.5 seconds for 6 seconds. So this means it is 1.2 times stronger than the bleed damage and lasts for 1 second longer. On screen now, you can see an enemy that is affected by burn. This status is going to synergize best with the Pyromancer class. The next status effect we have is Toxic, which is associated with this green skull and crossbones symbol. When applied to players, you take a damage over time, but this can be removed by healing yourself. This is referring to the specific class healing mechanic that your character has, and not weapon leech, skill leech, or regen. Enemies take damage equal to 3.5% of your ability power every 0.5 seconds for 6 seconds, so stronger than bleed, but almost on par with burn. You can see an enemy affected by the Toxic status effect on screen now. This status will synergize best with the Technomancer class. Now let's move on to the Slow status effect, which is associated with this purple symbol on screen. When applied to enemies, they have reduced movement and attack speed by anywhere from 30 to 75% depending on their resistances. Elites and bosses have higher resistance inherently, so they're going to be affected by this skill less. Luckily, this cannot be applied to your character. On screen now, you can see the effect that Slow has on an enemy. In addition to the purple icon, Slow also covers your enemy in a blue glow. This status synergizes best with the Trickster class, but is still very useful on any class. Alright, let's move on to the Freeze status effect, which is associated with this blue snowflake symbol. When applied to a player, it is a stun that the player can break free from by using their melee attack. You can see how to do that on screen now. When applied to an enemy, it is a stun that lasts for 3.5 seconds. You can see the freeze effect on an enemy now. Similar to Slow, the freeze effect can be very useful for stopping an enemy, boss, or elite from putting too much pressure on you. Along with the small snowflake symbol, the freeze effect covers you or the enemy in a layer of ice, making it easier to notice when a player or an enemy is affected. This status effect synergizes best with the Technomancer class, but is very useful on all the other classes as well. Let's move on to the Ash status effect, which is associated with this orange symbol. On a player, it is a stun that the player can break free from by using their melee attack. Unfortunately, I do not have any footage of this myself, but it is the exact same mechanic as Freeze. When applied to an enemy, it stuns them for 2.5 seconds. You can see the ash effect on an enemy now, and similar to slow, this effect can be very useful in many different situations. Along with the small orange symbol, the ash effect covers your enemy in a layer of ash, similar looking to the Golem skill on the Devastator. The status effect synergizes best with the Pyromancer, but again is very useful all around. Now, be aware that Freeze and Ash are both crowd control effects, and when used consecutively, their effects will get shorter. When used against elite or bosses consecutively, the elite or boss will gain effect resistance that is noted by this symbol on screen. The symbol starts out white but will become blue as they build up their immunity. Once they are immune, they will be encased in a blue aura. Next, let's talk about the two enemy debuffs. We're going to start with Vulnerability, which is associated with this eye symbol. When applied to the enemies, they take an increased 25% damage for 10 seconds. Luckily, this cannot be applied to players. You can see the vulnerability effect on an enemy now. In addition to the small eye symbol, the enemy will glow red, denoting that they are debuffed and will take more damage. This status can be gained from weapon and armor mods and is very helpful on any class. Last but not least, we have the weakness status effect, which is associated with this yellow heart symbol. When applied to an enemy, they deal 30% less damage for 6 seconds. Again, this cannot be applied to players. While vulnerability is useful against all enemies, I believe weakness works best against elites and bosses as they do the most damage. You can see the weakness status effect on an enemy now. In addition to the small heart symbol, they will have a blue static glow, denoting that they are debuffed and will deal less damage. This status can also be gained from weapon and armor mods and is helpful on any class. Well, that's about everything that you need to know about the status effects in Outriders. I know there was some confusion regarding these status effects, so I hope this video clears everything up and answers any questions that you might have had. Remember that crowd control will cause elites and bosses to build up immunity, and they also have diminishing returns in general if used consecutively. If you found this video helpful and informative, then please leave a like. If you would like to see more content from myself, then please subscribe. If there's anything specific you would like to see in a video, then please let me know down in the comments below. As always, stay safe out there, Outriders, and I hope to see you on Enoch. Well, no, it's not. We're not professionals.